The very first job I got was like a 3,500 square foot heart pine job. It was probably, the house was from, I think, 1880. And I had no clue about wax at that point. And as soon as I set the sander, the belt down on it, I went about 5 feet and I was like, what is this?
ATWF, welcome back to our little podcast gig brought to you by our worldwide source for all things wood floor business. Today's guest, wood floor business next gen rising floor pro star Josh Johnson Flooring, Deckard, Tennessee. If you remember how, when, and especially why you even got into hardwood flooring, then I think you'll appreciate, maybe even commiserate a bit with our guest as he relives his humble floor pro beginnings. Welcome back to All Things Wood Floor. It's an honor and a privilege to share this time with you, the best and the best of the business. Our flooring fellowship is growing stronger and stronger every day. Floor pros around the world, let's get to it. Josh Johnson Flooring, Deckard, Tennessee. Welcome to All Things Wood Floor.
Hey, how's it going?
Did I get that right? I knew I was going to screw that up. It's Deckard, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. You got it. Yep. A lot of people don't, but you did.
So listen, I've read your articles and stuff that you write in wood floor business. And what happened recently was once a year they pick the next gen class, which is they picked like 2 next generation, newer, up and coming young people that seem to really know flooring. They seem to really know how to run their business. And that was you. What was the deal with that? Did wood floor business contact you? How'd that all go down?
Actually, Sprig Lynn contacted me. I met him at the Bona convention back in October, I guess it was, in Charlotte. And I just went up and introduced myself to him and just started chatting. And he wanted to know how I got into everything and, how I got started. And we probably talked for 45 minutes. And we just went on about our business. And I don't know, it was probably 2 months later, he called me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing an article. He thought it might inspire somebody or whatever. So that's kind of how it all got started.
I can't decide if Sprig is more infamous or famous, but he's a heck of an ambassador. We met a few years ago on a podcast, and I just went down to the NWFA and he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. He gave me 3 or 4 hugs while I was down there. It's just, he is somebody. He's kind of a really cool dude.
He is. He's a really nice guy, and yeah, I was glad to meet him, and I've talked to him quite a few times since then. And I mean, he talks to me like he's known me all my life, so he's a good guy.
My question for you is this. Is this true? Like, you just decided to pull over a flooring van and ask him for a job? Is that where this all started?
Well, what really happened is the guy I was working for, we kind of had a disagreement. Okay. And I was actually doing roofing. And we had a disagreement, and that's probably the only job I've ever walked off in my life. I just left. It was either that or where we were going to get in a fight. So I left, and I was just driving down the road, and I saw this van, and I knew the guy, that ran the company. I knew him, and I saw him parked at a store. So I just pulled in, and I sat out there and kind of waited on him to come out, and he did. And I asked him for a job, and he told me to show up the next day, and I did, and that's how it all started.
So within 24 hours of quitting, you had this job.
I did. Yep.
It's kind of crazy because how's your first day? Like, how does this all start? Tell me what's going on. It's all hands-on learning, right? Did you know anything about flooring?
I had no clue.
How long ago was this?
And this would have been 2003, I think.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I'm 19, I think, at the time, and fresh out of school. And, I knew quite a bit of stuff. I just never, laid hardwood or anything like that. And, I was lost, But, after a couple of weeks, I started catching on pretty good and, just kind of went with it.
That was 2003. It's 2025. Oh, man, you said there'd be no math on this podcast. So if you add that together, you are 31.
31.
No, my math.
I wish I was 31.
There's had to be no math on the wood floor business final. Now it's 40% of my final grade. So it was a while ago. So you've got some years in the business now. Well, what did you do the first day? Like your first day on the job, they go, here's an edger, here's a big machine, go vacuum. What was day one like?
We were actually installing pre-finished wood, some 2 1/4 pre-finished, and it was not that good of a material. And we were doing a lot of culling. And about the time I thought I had it figured out, I didn't know anything about culling bad boards or any of that stuff. Thought I was really doing something. And next thing you know, a lot of the stuff I'd already laid in the floor, we had to take out, which it wasn't nailed yet, but, start having to fit everything back in. It's a little aggravating, but that's what I was doing.
Did they mostly have you watching and moving stuff and grabbing tools, or did they get you right in hands-on?
No, this was a 2-man crew.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I went straight into racking wood and cutting door jambs and, all of that stuff and, edging seams and, I jumped right in. Didn't really have a choice.
So was the beginning part of this was installation? Was that where it all kind of started? You were mostly installing? It wasn't end of the day you were out doing a buff and coat, right? You was install for a few days?
It was that's all I did. I never picked a sander up until probably 4 or 5 years later.
Good. That's good. So what you're telling me is a lot of what you did was hands-on learning, and at least you had time to just focus on one part of the business, the install part of it.
That's it. Yep, that's it. It would have really been a lot to take in if I was trying to do it all.
I look back, I worked for a guy that, he conned me away from leaving a really good job to go do flooring with him, and he was an absolute lunatic. My second day on the job, he got angry, and he threw a flooring mallet through a lady's bay window. And I thought, I can't work. What am I doing? I can't work for this guy. And so if you think about it, I went out and started renting stuff. I had no other choice. I started working and with my hands and learning myself. Must be what you had to do, was just teach yourself. Were you self-taught for the most part? Did you get a lot of time in, on the job with the company that you started working with?
Yeah, I worked for them for probably, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. And during that time, it's so long ago, I can't really remember the exact time frame or whatever, but I ended up getting married, and I needed a job with some insurance and that sort of thing, because I wasn't making much money at all then, and so I ended up getting a job with a local housing authority here. We did maintenance on all the apartments and housing projects and all of that. We did maintenance on those and stuff, and then I ended up just deciding to try to, lay some hardwood and stuff in the evenings and stuff for people. And that's kind of how my own deal got started. I would do a job and, I didn't really have any tools. I would do a job and buy a tool. And that's kind of how I got started, just doing it in the evenings and weekends. And that went on for a while. And then, like in the article, I kept getting calls about people wanting their floor sanded, and I had no clue how to do it.
Were you doing at the beginning unfinished and pre-finished?
Yeah, we were installing both.
Was it pretty much strip, or did you? It's hard to go from like 2 1/4, 3 1/4 to, oh, look, I have a 5-inch engineered plank. Oh, look, there's a glue down. Oh, look. Were you getting pretty much the same type of work, or did you get all types of flooring those first few years?
We did. Back then around here, we didn't really do any wide plank stuff. We did some 3 1/4s, but that was about it. Most was 2 1/4 and 3 1/4. And then, we would have to glue some engineered down on some slabs, but that was about it. We didn't do any 5 or 6 inch where we were gluing and nailing and all that back then.
Were you always in Deckard, or was this somewhere else that you started?
Well, I was living in Winchester at the time. They're 2 little towns that are
in Tennessee. Yeah, they're little tiny. Yeah, they're near each other. So these are have you always been there?
I have.
So if you're looking back at this, when do you think, once you got rolling, did the sanding and finishing part, do you think you got a lot of square footage behind you first before you had to pick up a sander, or did you say, listen, I got to start sanding my own stuff right away?
Well, I would just completely turn the sanding stuff down at first, because I didn't have the money to go out and buy the equipment and stuff, and, I'm working during the day, one job, doing this at night and everything. So it kind of got to where I was so busy. I was working day and night, 7 days a week. And I told my wife, something's got to give. I can't keep doing this, And so I stopped at a flooring store here in town, and I went in and talked to the guy, and he told me that he would sub, installs and stuff out to me. So I was like, okay, well, so I turned my notice in and I started doing some installs. And during that time, I would save up enough, and I bought me a belt sander, and an edger, and I kind of dabbled in it a little bit, But before that, there's a lady that my wife is friends with. She has some rental property, and I made a deal with her that if she would rent the equipment and supply everything, that I would do it for free, for the labor, just to get the experience.
Right.
It's a rental anyway. It don't have to be perfect, so that would be something good to learn on. So I did 3 or 4 of those, and thought I knew what was going on, but I found out pretty quick I didn't.
Like what? This is really cool. What were the challenges? Like, what really knocked you on your behind?
Well, see, I knew nothing. I didn't know how to edge. I didn't know I didn't know to buff stain or buff. I mean, I was clueless.
Did you know how to put the paper on? There's little things are like putting the paper on the machine, or
yeah, this was a little 110 sander that had the expandable drum. The paper just
little
slid
easy
over
8 with the drop handle.
Yep.
I use this all the time when I'm traveling around the country. That's not a bad little place to start. At 110, just plug it in and go.
Yep, and I even we had a lot of floors around here that had some wax on them, some old heart pine stuff.
Ooh.
And I was doing some of those with it. And I even had some weights that I kept myself when I would rent the sanders or whatever to get started. When I would rent them, I had my own weights. I would set some weights on them so it would cut harder.
Did it start like I used to say? I did the same thing. I had a little 110 sander for 2 years. When you put the weights on it and you get that wax, it starts to slide around side to side like you're water skiing.
It does. It starts drifting.
Yeah, drifts left and right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a learning curve for sure.
Well, what was it? Did you ever get a big job with the lightweight equipment and go, uh-oh?
I did. The very first one I did. I did the rental jobs for the lady, and the very first job I got was like a 3,500 square foot heart pine job. It was probably, the house was from I think 1880, and I had no clue about wax at that point. And as soon as I set the belt down on it, I went about 5 feet, and I was like, what is this?
Right.
And,
$1,000 in paper later.
It was. And, we didn't have vacuum systems or any of that, So I talked to an old guy around town, and I was telling him the problem I was having. And he told me to take flour and cornmeal and put it on the floor.
Wow.
And just sprinkle it out, and it actually helped quite a bit. And I'd never heard of that, but it did help.
There are tricks. We'd get an old sneaker and we'd lean that drum back, and we'd take the sneaker and fold it over, and we'd use the sole, and we would use it like an eraser and clean all the garbage that we could off the drum so that we could keep the life of the paper and start over again. But the stuff turns to lava. It heats, and then it cools, and it's like glass, and it sticks to it. Oh, that's a horrible job.
It does, and it'll have like one spot about an inch or inch and a half wide around the belt. The rest of it will look good. And, it gets expensive quick doing that.
And 3,500 feet, that's the last place that you want to be. So what happens after that? Like, what's when did you realize you're starting to get control of this? And when did you say, I think I got to get a big machine? I'm sure you have a big machine now.
Oh, yeah, I do now. It was probably it might have been 2 or 3 years before I did that. But I wasn't doing, I wasn't sanding floors every day either. Right. I was doing one every other month or something, and, so it wasn't like I was doing it every day with it. So, it took me 2 or 3 years, and I finally, got comfortable enough and like, I'm going to get the stuff. I'm going to keep doing this because I'd already seen that that's what I wanted to do with sand floors.
Yeah, once you get it, you ask people whether you like install or sand and finish, and it's surprising how many people go right for the sand and finish. Did you pick up and go? Or I know that in your magazine article you mentioned that you got a lot of mentorship and you jumped into it with, is it Terry Chambly?
Yeah, he's the guy that I started with on my very first day. He's
Oh,
the
wow.
guy that taught me. He taught me to install wood, and showed me a bunch of tricks doing the install stuff. So that's where I learned that was from Terry Chambly.
And then when did I know over at Jeffco Flooring you got, what is it, Terry Owen?
Yeah, Terry.
When did he come into the picture?
That when I started sanding floors, that's when I had to rely on him quite a bit. I would have scratches or whatever. I didn't know about water popping and all of that. And we're trying to get a little darker look and all of that. And then I would just have to call him, and he would kind of tell me what to do. He helped me a lot.
Are all the woods similar? Like here, we had a ton of like red oak and white oak, and that's pretty much it. Every now and then you hit a maple floor, but down where you are, even Kent Rogerson said his very first job was 3,500 feet of hard pine with the shellac and the lacquer and the wax on it, which is terrible. Did you instantly get all these different types of wood, or was there, like we had, just oak everywhere?
Well, we have a place up here in Mont Eagle, and it's an old village, and I want to say there's like 120 houses in there, and they're all, I think the newest one in there is like 1902 or something. They're from like the Civil War era to 1902. So and they have a season from, I think it goes from May to August is when everybody comes in and stays in them, and then they're shut down the rest of the time. So in the off season, I would usually do one or two a year up there, and that's where all the old pine is, and that, I hate going there honestly, but because of that reason, nothing is easy.
Give me the people that you worked with that really kind of helped you get rolling, get into the business. Who'd you learn from the most? What kind of stuff did you learn from them?
I mean, I don't know that there's one specific thing.
Sure.
The pine was probably the hardest for me because it scratches so easy, lap marks and stain and all of that. It really was tough on me. But and that's probably the worst one. The others, they're all kind of the same. We don't have a lot of variation here. We have like white oak, red oak. We have some pine, in the old heart pine.
Yep.
And we'll do a maple every now and then, but that's about it.
Who was the first person to let you know that we have this thing called the scraper, that you got to be able to know how to use it?
Well, see, nobody would tell me anything around here. And so I was in Jeffco. That's where I would buy my supplies at. And I saw one in there, and I was talking to them about it. And I bought one to try, and it worked pretty good because I was using like the little cheap one you'll buy at like Home Depot,
Sure.
the little plastic one or whatever.
Yeah.
So I bought a good scraper, and I was like, holy cow, this is a big difference here. But I saw the good one in Jeffco when I was in there buying supplies. Every time I would go there, I would, look around and I would try to buy something like that would speed us up or help. And, and this is probably around 08 or so. We were in a recession, and times were tough then. And I had two little kids, and, I couldn't just go, I want to buy all this equipment and buy it. I had to, do what I could.
Yeah, 07, 08 got really tricky for everybody. Wood floor industry used to be kind of Teflon. If you could do floors, you could do floors. And then that recession hit. It changed a lot of things. What was the learning curve like? You got that under your belt, and then there's that progressive. What was the most difficult machine? I'm thinking it'd be the edger.
The edger. Yeah, the edger. See, because I had no clue really of how to operate it right. I would do long walls and short walls the same, with head joints and all that. I would do them all the same. Didn't know what I was doing at all. I did a lot of palm sanding because I would leave edger marks everywhere, and at least I did know to palm sand them out. So that's a good thing.
If you got that woodworking background, at least I see some marks. I need to get rid of them. But an edger is a beast of a tool. It's the greatest tool in the box, but you got to know. I've seen guys that have been doing this 20 years, and you'll go, wait, stop. Who taught you to run an edger like that? It depends on who taught you and the right way. Like I could go get an NWFA manual and read it. We didn't have the internet for that. Were you able to use like YouTube and the internet and talk to people and get a visual on it?
Well, not at first because I didn't have internet at my house. We kind of lived out where we didn't have internet, and so no, I didn't really have any of that until later on. Probably, I'm going to say around '08 or '09. Would get on YouTube then. But when I first got started, I didn't have any of that. It was just hope and a prayer, pretty much.
What happened? Explain to me the day that you left the little machine and the big one showed up. I remember my day. Like, what was it like when you went from the little machine to the big boy machine?
Oh, holy cow! I realized why I had the belt. And I would wear a belt around my waist, and yeah, as soon as I set it on the floor, I'm like, "Good Lord, this is a big difference," and the speed you had to move with it compared to the other one. I done got used to walking kind of slow, letting it cut. This one here, you need to be moving.
Don't you find and I had like you did 2 years behind an SL8 little tilt sander. I was happy because it really taught me to sand by feel, even with the big machine.
Right. Yep.
I'm like you. I used to say we do about 500 feet in a day. We got that big machine. We finally had the money to get it. And the first day we did 2,500 feet, but we had to be on the second floor of a barn and they didn't put any rails in. And they gave me that, like you said, the belt. And he's aiming me right off the balcony with this 5 horsepower beat. Right. I'm like, I'm going to die my first day with this sander. And, I was the guy running the drums, so my partner did the edging. But were you a little spooked by that? Like, you got to keep that thing moving. You can't let that thing stop for a second. The sausages all over the floor.
Right. Yeah. And like, I've seen some people too, the first time you put them on a buffer, if you try to put somebody up there on a buffer that never ran it, they probably would have ended up in the bottom.
Yeah. I hope they cam it tight, because I had a guy didn't cam it tight, and he had a 60 grit screen. He turned it on, it hopped up in the air, grabbed the cord, wrapped him into it, and luckily it pulled the cord out of the wall. Then the handle went into the drywall, and he's just so lucky he didn't get hurt. Buffers are a scary little machine. If you fight with a buffer, you're a dead man. If you just lay loose, let it do its thing, put it in your hip, you're good.
That's it. Everybody tries to fight it, and you're not going to win.
No. So with all you went through, what kind of advice would you give somebody would your advice to like a young up and coming flooring person go up the highway or to Walmart, find a guy in a van, knock on his window and ask him if he needs help, or would you think they should try it a little different way moving forward?
Yeah. I think you need to find go to work for somebody that can teach you that.
Sure.
Or at least do it enough to know a little bit about what you're doing. And then I would say go to a class, NWFA or, some sort of class that would shorten the learning curve a lot, and I had no clue that even existed at the time. And I was having trouble on a job here, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And I had a power drive, and it was a white pine job, and I was having all kind of trouble with scratches on it. Couldn't figure it out. And I got online searching, and I found Bona Tech Support. So I ended up getting in touch with Jeremiah Strong, and that's how I met him. And he helped me through that and whatever. And we got that one done. And he called me one day and wanted to come to the job, bring me some sandpaper or something, and just chat. And he told me about the certified craftsman deal that they have or whatever. So I ended up going to a class they have in Nashville at Jeremiah's place. And that was a big help too. There was, I thought I knew quite a bit, or I knew enough to get by.
Sure.
But there were some things they taught us there that, just make you a little bit better, and the little details is what really sets you apart.
Those guys like to share. These big companies, they go out and they get, I like that they might have executives and they might have, a lot of different departments, but when it comes down to the training, they go get guys that got dirt on their hands. They've been in the field. They've been in the trenches with us. We appreciate working with each other and sharing what we know. Those classes, whether they're Bona, NWFA, or whoever, they're invaluable. And even better that you go to different parts of the country, because up here we do things a certain way, and down in Florida they do it one way or another. When you get together and you listen from these people all around the country, everybody's got a really cool way of like getting to the same end result. And it's not easy work, but boy, you do pick up a lot of little tricks, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And I met a guy at Jeremiah's class. His name is Kevin. I can't remember his last name. I've got his phone number. But anyway, he was from Louisiana, from New Orleans. And he was telling me about all the moisture problems that he runs into and all the stuff that he has to do on jobs. And I'm like, good Lord, man, it's a lot different than, the way we do things, but it's just depending on where you're at.
Yeah, I did work in Florida. It's nothing like Scottsdale, Arizona, and here up in New Hampshire, it goes from bone dry to tropically damp. Most of it is brutal, and you have to watch. Then you really have to know your technical background and your species of wood and your conditions, etc. So where you are in Tennessee, is it kind of like we have? Does it shift from really dry winter to kind of a more humid, damp summer, or is it pretty even keeled?
No, there's a pretty big swing here. It'll get really cold, in the winter, and I get numerous calls every winter. People call that with gaps in their floors, and and I'll ask them, was it there last summer? And
yeah.
No, it just appeared. I'm like, well, it's been 20 degrees for a week, and the heat's running wide open. It's a seasonal gap, and that's common. So yeah, it fluctuates quite a bit here now.
As you started to get all your flooring equipment together, get your buffer, get your edge, are probably into dust containment, whatever. Were you starting to let the installations go by the wayside? Or were you still juggling? Now, could you do both?
Yeah, we do both. I've always done both. So it takes both to make it happen. So we do both.
So you can get your wood. Now you're like, okay, I'll do my own install. Now I'll pack it up and put my own sand and finish on it.
Yeah, because I ran into a lot of people that would call me to do a job, and when I told them I didn't sand floors, they didn't want to let me install it either. They wanted the same guy, deal with the same company. So I can understand that too. So, but yeah, I've always done both. Since I started sanding, they just keep rolling.
Good for you. Is there any advice that you'd say to someone that's starting out like you did, maybe to do it differently? If someone was going to go out today, be a young guy, let's say out of a VOTEC that says, I think I want to go get into flooring, would you give them any particular advice on how to start? Especially, how do you go find a mentor like you did multiple times?
Right. The best advice probably is to go to work for somebody that knows what they're doing, that has a good reputation and does things right. Learn from them. And then once you know enough, you go to some of these classes and, learn all you can, and because you can never learn too much. You run into things weekly, that you have to figure out, and it just takes experience. You can stay in a classroom all you want, but you're going to run into things where you just have to figure it out sometimes, and, that just takes experience.
I think a lot of people are concerned with, you get time in, you train somebody, and as you know, next thing you know, they got business cards, they got equipment, they're starting their own company. Some people don't fear that, and some people absolutely do.
Yeah, I don't really fear that because I can't keep anybody regardless.
Right.
The probably the longest I've ever had anybody helping me was 3 or 4 years. And I don't know, trying to find people to work that's a job in itself.
I went to a trade show, like, a builder show with a buddy of mine that had a really, really good flooring company. And we'd like to go to shows together. And somebody said to him, so what do you do? Framing, siding? What do you do? And he goes, what I do is I train people to go start businesses that compete with me. Because he was good. He was really good. And he would train his guys really, really good. And then someone would tell them, you know what? I got money. Why don't you go do it yourself? So luckily, a lot of those guys stayed together. We would do projects together whenever we got too busy and kind of, group it.
Right. And it's like everybody wants to come in and make $25 or whatever right off the bat and they don't know what they're doing, and, you've got to put in a little time and be productive, before you can make money, and nobody wants to stick it out, and I don't know. And it's hard work, it's not easy work, and just seems like nobody really wants to work hard much, or not around here anyway.
Yeah, a lot of people get told that and I'll tell you what, it's changing. Right now, I have nephews in my family that are getting into electrical and contracting and heavy equipment operations. And some people are meant to work with their hands. A lot of people are. And I think in flooring, there's always a future. Look at what you did. You came in during a recession. Now, did you open Johnson Flooring around 2008? Is that when you decided to take the plunge?
Yep, that's when I went full time.
Okay.
Yep.
And
looking back, it wasn't a good decision, probably, but it worked.
I think it was. I know a buddy of mine. We were going to start a distributorship. We thought with all the money in the world, we could never do it. We hit the recession, and he went and did it. And you know what? Everyone was hurting and so desperate, and he had money. He got that business going. By the time it came back online, people had been happy to take his checks, take his money. Boom! He started a location, got a second location, so he did get up and running. I think sometimes when the market's bottomed out like that, maybe it was a really good idea you did jump in then, because I think there'd be a lot less pressure than if, where you were getting 30 phone calls a day and getting slammed.
Right. Yeah. Getting overwhelmed with so much work, and, we weren't as fast back then either, and yeah, I mean, it does have its upside, It was, I mean, I was working probably cheaper than I should have been, but I mean, I had to make it work. I couldn't price myself out of work. Yeah, I was relying on that. I didn't have another option.
What made you decide?
I was borderline being broke.
Oh, sorry. What made you decide it was time for Johnson Flooring? Like, this is it, gonna get going?
Yeah, I mean, I was working, like I said, I was working 12 and 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. I would work my day job from 7 to 4. I would come home, change clothes, get in my van, and I would work until 9, 10 o'clock every night. And then I would work all day Saturdays and Sundays installing wood, doing that. And, I was like, something's got to change here. I'm,
right.
It's going to kill me.
This episode is brought to you by Odie's Oil. Developed by a wood flooring pro, no finish is more safe, durable, beautifying, and versatile, with lower cost and higher profit margin. Experience the pinnacle of finish with free on-site demos and training. Learn more at odiesoil.com. That's ODIES oil.com.
How'd you get your work when you first kind of got the Johnson Flooring going? How did you get your work?
Just from people that I knew.
Like word of mouth?
Word of mouth. Yeah, word of mouth. I never advertised or any of that, so I always thought if you do a good job, they'll tell a few people, and that's kind of how it all started. Just doing a good job and, going from there.
What was it like? Did you make any mistake? Everybody makes mistakes. Did you make any were you afraid? I was scared to death my first job. And I did make a mistake. 7 o'clock at night in the fall. So that means it's pitch dark and I'm on my hands and knees. I did such a good job. I'm coating this lady's house on my hands and knees with oil poly. And I'm backing out and I see the headlights come up and I realize how dark it is. I hear the kids, I hear the car doors, and I hear the lady say, "Oh God, Steve, no, please, no." I had coated her whole downstairs with oil poly. It's not going to be dry till the next day, and she had groceries and kids in the car. I did never charge her. I went home. I never billed her for the floor. I didn't talk to her again. Did you ever do anything as stupid as I've done?
Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. The 3,500 foot job, the Hart Pine job I was telling you about,
yeah.
that I did. We did the downstairs first. This was a 2-story house, so we did the downstairs. Came back like a month later, did the upstairs. So these old boards, they're gapped and all that, and we're using oil-based poly at the time, and it just didn't register with me. The ceiling for the downstairs was also wood.
Oh,
so I'm polying, and it's running through the cracks to the bottom. So I end up having to resand the downstairs again after I'd already sanded it.
Ouch.
So yeah, I learned from that.
I think we've done that. I had the same thing. It was a spruce, that 1.5-inch tongue and groove. It was the second floor, but it was the ceiling for the kitchen. And we went downstairs to get more poly, and my partner goes, "It's raining." I go, "What do you mean it's raining?" The guy started in the middle but didn't spline it. So there was this big gap right over the kitchen counter, and the poly is just raining down. So we ran to the van, we got a thing of rosin paper, and we stretched it across the counter. And luckily later we were able to scrape that and everything. But you don't think of these things. I once did a floor, we were hammering. We go to take lunch. We go downstairs. And underneath the flooring was a bunch of pine shelving with no protection. All her china had bounced off and onto the floor.
Oh, man.
Luckily, it was the cheap stuff. So, so you did the old poly rain.
I did. And, I was working at night then. So it was dark. We didn't really have the house didn't really have good lights anyway, but we didn't have any on downstairs. We were working upstairs. So, and we had no clue. We came downstairs. We were done. Went home. Came back the next day to put another coat on, and that's when I realized, we had trouble. So we just went ahead and finished the upstairs, and once we got it done, we started back on the downstairs.
Oh no! Your first big machine, was it a belt or a drum?
It was a belt.
A belt sander. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. So you didn't have to go through the drum sanding paper where the paper explodes and scares you into a heart attack.
It was I bought it used. It was a Bona Pro Sand, the 8-inch.
That's my favorite machine.
And I'm still running it to this day.
That machine was made to come apart in 3 pieces in Europe because, they got 1,000-year-old buildings without elevators. You can take that into 3 pieces, bring it all in the house, and a guy can work by himself with it. It's a great machine.
Right, yeah. It's this machine. I've had to replace bearings and a bunch of that, normal stuff over the years, but it still runs good. And, I'm comfortable with it. It does what I need it to do. And, I don't see any needing upgrading or buying a new. I mean, this one's working just fine, so I keep rolling with it.
You ever have a problem? You mentioned doing pine and heart pine. I'll have guys call and go, "Hey, I can't keep my belt tracking." And I'll say, "Did you do a pine floor?" They go, "Yeah, today." And I go, and then the belt wouldn't track. You see it, right? Sometimes when you're doing the work that you're doing, a lot of pine, a lot of resinous flooring jumps up onto the upper roller, gets in there, starts throwing the belt. You start adjusting the tracking. I saw a guy once did a pine floor, and instead of just cleaning the upper roller, the belt ate through his door in the shape of the belt right out the side of the machine.
Oh, man. Yeah. But believe it or not, on this machine, I have never, ever had to adjust the tracking on it or anything.
Good for you.
I don't know what it is about this machine or whatever, but I've never had to touch it. It's always ran good, which I do clean it, But as far as having to adjust things or any of that, no, it's still just like it was. It does good.
Did you get into stages where you're like, oh, look, I have my first, stain on whatever, maple, or I have my first... They get technical, don't they? They're not all the same. Every job can be a little bit more technical. Did you have any that were particularly more technical than others, more difficult? You get like a pine floor that they want a white stain or a pickling. That's always a nightmare.
Yeah, no, that for some reason we never really had to do any of that. I hope that's gone. Wasn't really looking forward to it, but no, I never really had anybody that wanted that. We did a lot of dark walnut, the dark stuff. We did a lot of that on pine, and I didn't really like doing that. But once you do a few, it's not that bad. Probably the hardest job I've done to date is the one I was telling you about that I had to call Jeremiah. The white pine. It was 14-inch wide planks with cut nails.
Oh.
And we had to set every one of those cut nails multiple times. We were running a power drive then. So
how'd you set them?
Well, I got on one of the groups on Facebook and asked a question about that, and somebody told me about the air locker. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's like an air nail gun that it just shoots. It pushes a pin out. You can put it down and pull the trigger, and a pin sets the nail. It's actually made to drive nails out of boards, but it'll also work as a nail set.
That makes sense because I used to use a big drift pin punch, but I got in the chat room and I said, I used to sell Bostic tools, and I used to take an old N80 stick nailer, which was a framing gun, and we would run it at 120 psi empty, and you just put it right over those cut nails and fire away. And we were able to get a lot of them set in, and then, but you can't be hitting them with your buffer or your rotary sander or planetary sander, because then you got big problems. So you got all that stuff kind of all worked out. So looking over all your years in business and where you are right now, do you have any ideas where you want to take it moving forward? Is it pretty much you got what you got, or you have other plans that you'd like to carry out?
Yeah, I've got some plans. Just I don't know if I'll be able to make them happen. I'm wanting to open up a showroom. I'm 41 now, and I don't see me being able to do this throughout my whole career. I think I'm going to have to slow down a little, and I would like to open up a showroom and then have like an install and a sanding crew, and phase more into that side of it. But I don't know if that'll work out or not. I guess time will tell.
It's tricky. It depends on the needs and for you and the community that you serve. I've seen people that open elaborate showrooms, and it's a really big mistake. And I see other people that add too many people to their crew, and that's a big mistake. Is this right size? It's that Goldilocks zone where you got just enough people to do the work, get paid. You're not chasing people, and maybe you have a small showroom so that people can go there and look at it without taking away from the work that you've got to get out there and do in the field. That's what always happened to me. Is I'd get in the office, get going, and then the guys would say, "We need you out here." I'd go change, get my jeans on, go out and help the guys. So you're right. You got to look at it really good.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to find somebody that can stick with me, where I can get them where they need to be, so I can focus on something else. And maybe it'll get there. My son, he's fixing to be 17 here in a couple weeks, and he's worked with me the last few summers, and he's getting where he can do more. But he, as of right now, he don't want to do it. So I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell.
Well, let me ask you this: with what you're doing, this is kind of a tricky one for hardwood floor pros. It was for me. How do you know what you're worth? Like, how do you know what to try? Unless your competition flat out tells you exactly what they're doing. How do you know how demanding this is? How do you value it? How do you put a number on it and say, I need to charge this much a foot?
I'm still trying to figure that out, honestly. Yeah, it's kind of hard to do because every job's different too. So I don't really know. I mean, I kind of try to figure how long it's going to take me, how much I'm paying my guys, how much my product I'm using, and try to put a number that I want at the end on it. But that's just still kind of guessing. I would say.
Well, I know. Listen, in this area, okay, and we're talking 30 years. Years ago, I was the highest price guy around here at $1.75 to sand and finish, and everybody was $1.50. In Boston, you could get floors for $1. Anytime you got near a major populated city, let's say Boston, there's $1. You get out from there to the rural area, it's $1.50, and you get to some of the really nice little lake communities and Martha's Vineyard and the ocean properties, you're getting $1.75. I think it was like that for decades until we got into the recession. And then when we got into the pandemic and came out of it, all of a sudden, guys are getting $2.50, $3.50, $4 a foot just to sand, install, and then even for installation. And what I really liked about that was there was no way they were going back to $1.50.
Right. Yeah. And the recession probably weeded out some people that were working too cheap.
Yeah.
They either had to go up or go out of business, and a lot of them probably went out.
And it's good because you see somebody who's at $3.50, then you're really concerned about the person at $1. Because those guys, even the guys that were working at $1 are out there today for $2.50, which today in this market up here in Boston, that's very low. But at least they're not out there working for $1. The poly doesn't cost any more than it did back then. The waters do, the water-based finishes, but guys have worked around that. And it's physically demanding, right? How are you physically? Is it a big demand on you? Do you have to keep working out every day?
Yeah, I'm not as nimble as I used to be. That's why I don't like the installs as much. My shoulder and my elbow hurt, quite a bit. And luckily my knees are fine. Most people have trouble with their knees, but my knees are fine, but it's my shoulder and elbow and, all of that. So That's why I don't like installs as much anymore, especially carrying wood inside.
When you go in to do a sand and finish job, you throw your headset on, and do you just throw your ear protection in there, or are you listening to the radio, podcasts, music, recordings, anything?
No, I've got some earmuffs I wear.
Yep.
I like to be able to hear the sander too, so I don't listen to anything. But if I'm not sanding, we listen to radio quite a bit. But as far as earbuds or any of that, no, I don't do that while I'm sanding.
Now, are you one of those guys that can just sand all day, every day? I had zero problem with that. I just, boom, I'll go.
Yeah, yep. That's what I like doing, especially since the power drive and all that came about. That's kind of been a game changer.
It is different trying all those different machines, right? I remember they had the square buff, and I'm like, this is not what we should be doing. But the rotary machines, planetary machines, they're a little bit different. They put a whole new twist onto things, and they're still developing them. There's a lot of modified equipment that's being used and called, planetary when it's not. It's you put a multi-head on a buffer that doesn't make it planetary. However,
right.
We're now getting the power and the ability and the scratch pattern that we need to be able to do this. And manufacturers are now designing and engineering these machines to work for hardwood flooring, not, a concrete buffer that you turned into a wood floor buffer, or a janitorial buffer that you turned into a wood floor rotary machine. It's not how it works. You finding that these new pieces of equipment, you're adding it to your portfolio?
Yeah, and I didn't realize there were so many different planetary sanders out there until I went to the expo last week, and I was walking around, and there's quite a few different brands out there, that I didn't really know about.
Oh, I got in a little trouble in the last podcast. I just threw out the word rotary sander because of what it is, and I sold equipment. Boy, that's how I got in this industry, by selling industrial machinery. And somebody said, well, they're all planetary. I'm like, no, they're not. Planetary gears, they have a moon gear, they have a planetary gear, they have a sun gear. There's a different rotation. Those ones the multi-heads that you put on, that the discs immediately spin in the opposite direction, that you're using a form of rotary sanding. But when you're getting into planetary sanding, the gear rotations and ratios are different. They move in another direction. And it's all about not just that you put something circular on the floor, but you're actually moving the heads around to remove enough material to not leave too much scratch pattern. And I think right now people are going a little too crazy, leaving their big machine at home and trying to grind it out with these machines. They're getting there. And then some people will tell you that they can be the be all end all. I still think you got to bring the big machine in for the first few cuts.
Sometimes a lot of my jobs I sand with just the planetary. If we're doing a refinish job, like on the old wax built up stuff, I'll bring the big machine in, but not very often.
So what kind of job works really good for, like, I did one next door here, was a fur floor, and that's all I needed was a planetary sander. Like, what kind of jobs are you really comfortable? Like, no, we don't need to take the belt sander out for this one.
Well, I mean, here recently, I did a pre-finished floor. We sanded it off with just the power drive. We had the diamond pucks on there, and we never had to get the big machine off the truck.
But see, that's the big development recently. Is a while back you could go to ceramic abrasives and things like that, but now you're getting these diamond pucks and copper plates and carbide wheels. That does make a big difference. Tell me a little bit about the diamond cups.
Yeah, they're a game changer. We put those on there. You can only run them, I think, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and you need to let them cool off, or they'll get too hot and melt the contact cement that holds them on to the Velcro. But we did the whole job with them. We did, I want to say it was 800 or 900 feet, and we had it sanded off with the first cut with the pucks in like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. And it pretty much took the bevels and everything out. So, it was this nice.
See, like you said, game changer. It's been a while since I've messed with some of the equipment full time. And yeah, this is what you're seeing. That's why I always ask what's going on out there. There is a lot going on that's making it easier taking some stress off you guys, making you be a little healthier, a little smarter. Is moving the equipment around physically still a royal pain in the behind?
I've got a trailer, and we've got everything stored pretty neat. And I've got 2 guys that help me. So yeah, I mean, it's no problem. And the big machine still is the hardest part because I don't like rolling mine anywhere but on the hardwood. So I carry it from the trailer to the floor. I don't roll it on anything but wood.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of sucks. But other than that, it's not that bad.
Mind if I jump into your rapid fire questions and see how you wind up with those, and then I can let you roll on?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, man, here we go. Let me just see what I get here. Josh Johnson Flooring. Excellent. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask these rapid fire questions. You give me pretty much the shortest answer. You do not have to elaborate on these. Feel free to just throw them at me in any way you got. Here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. If there's a Hollywood movie that was made about your life, who would you cast to play you?
Probably Kevin Costner.
Good for you. Have you ever had a really strange or interesting flooring request or project that you've worked on?
No, nothing I would really say strange. No.
Good for you.
I heard Aaron Sheev's podcast. I heard about the footprint.
Oh, the bloody footprint.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I hadn't had anything like that.
If you had not picked this up, if you had not chased a van down on the highway and said, please give me a job, what would you be doing instead of hardwood flooring?
Oh, well, I always wanted to be a professional race car driver. I used to race some, and I always thought, I was going to go somewhere doing that. But, I kind of realized that wasn't going to happen. But besides that, I wanted to do underwater welding at one time.
Good for you. I know someone that does that. That's not an easy gig. Okay, what's your favorite tool? Is there a tool you got that you do flooring with that you can absolutely not live without?
Probably my power drive.
Nice. If you could spend the day, right? Pick anybody in the hardwood flooring industry that you want to just go hang out with or work with, who would that be?
Sprague Lynn.
Yeah, he's on everybody's list.
Yeah.
You ever take breaks when you're working?
Just a lunch break.
You got a snack, you got to go to, you got some liquid that you got to take down before you get back in there?
Yeah, yep, Sundrop.
Nice.
Yep.
You got a favorite wood species?
I like hickory a lot. I like the way hickory looks, especially like the character grade.
If you had a whole pile of leftover flooring in your barn or your shop or that, what would you plan on doing with it?
Probably burn it.
Yeah. Good for you. Everybody's got somebody to burn that. Your last question. Okay. In your home, where you live, where you reside, when you're not chasing down vans for jobs, you got any carpet in that house, or is it all hardwood?
You probably are not going to believe this. I do not have a stick of hardwood in my house.
What do you got?
Well,
I've
got stained concrete.
Wow.
Yep, stained concrete. That's what I have. I have no carpet or hardwood. So
I don't know what to say about it. You're the first person. I think I just start. I'm speechless. We're gonna start all over back.
Yep. I mean, you would not think that, but no, it's stained concrete.
I got to hook you up with the people from My Floors Are Concrete Business Magazine someplace.
Yep.
Keep you going.
Yep. But when I build my next house, I'm probably gonna do like some rift and quartered white oak, some wide plank. I like that too. So I like hickory, but it's kind of finicky, movement, expansion and contraction and all that. So I'll probably do like a rift and quartered white oak.
Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, Josh, before I let you go, I got to thank you because I did have a chance at the NWFA convention in Charlotte to run into you. That was my first one since 1999. I had the time of my life. It's the greatest fellowship of people, men and women. They're just fantastic. And I finally get a chance to talk with you. We kept texting. It was like being in a casino. I don't know where you are. We're sending pictures. Yep. I finally find you. And Mike from Bona's like, I need to talk with you. We're having a meeting. And I did not mean to ditch you, but I was running in 9 different directions. You're a good guy, man. I like talking with you.
Yeah, it all worked out. I appreciate you doing this. It's been fun.
Well, listen, thanks for joining me, and I'll let you know when this all gets out there. And thanks for joining the podcast. You're a really good man. I appreciate your time.
Okay, I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, thanks, buddy. We'll talk soon. Take care.
Bye. You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of All Things Wood Floor, brought to you by Odie's Oil. the wood floor finish that is safe and beautiful while delivering a lower cost and higher profit margin. You can find the article about Josh Johnson's start in the wood flooring industry in the show notes for this episode. If you liked this episode, please rate and review All Things Wood Floor, and don't forget to subscribe.